Question 4. Scientists can estimate the age of fossils by measuring the amount of carbon minus 14 in the fossil. When an animate object dies, the amount of carbon minus 14, which is measured in grams, in the object is given by this formula here. So I straight away notice that they've given me a model or a formula, and they've told me little bits about it. They said T is the time in years since the death of the object, M is a constant, and A seems to be, even though they haven't said it, which they should, in an exam, they should say it's the amount of carbon minus 14 in the object. So it says show that M is the mass of carbon 14 in the object at death. Now, maybe you've started to notice this already. Often just the way the model is built, M is the amount of bacteria or what else have we looked at? We've looked at population growth. It's the amount of that at the beginning. So at time 0. Now that's just, it makes sense to have a part of the model because it does matter how much bacteria we start with, etc. But maybe you've started to notice that at time 0, A seems to be equal to M. So show that M is the mass of carbon 14 in the object at death. Well, here's the amount of carbon 14 at death. We don't know what it is, so we call it A. Now this is only at time 0. This seems to be happening, and we don't know what A or M are at the time 0, but we know that usually this seems to be happening. It's just something for you to notice. So when time is 0, we can put in T as 0. We have anything times 0 is 0. Anything to the power 0 is 1. So I've just shown that at time 0, M does equal to A. Now, that's just a time 0. I don't know, I haven't come out with a constant here, and it does say M is a constant. So I haven't found out the constant. I've just shown that if I knew what the amount of carbon 14 or minus 14 was, I would, at the beginning, only at time 0, I would have the value of M. An object is 3,000 years old. Find in terms of M. So I still don't know M, is what they're saying in part 2. So an object is 3,000 years old. So that's time. Time since the death of the object. So we have A is equal to ME. Yeah, as I said, I don't know what M is because I haven't been told what's happening at the start. ME to the power of minus 0.0010, 12 T. Now it says T is 3,000. I don't know anything else. Throw that into my calculator. I end up with M times E to the power of minus 0.36. Is that as far as I can go? It seems to be. And let me just make sure. Find in terms of M, grand. The amount, find in terms of M, the amount of carbon minus 14 in the object. So if I knew what M was, I'd be able to tell you the amount of carbon-14. So if I knew what the amount of carbon-14 was at the, or -14 was at the very beginning at time is 0, I'd be able to tell you M. But they haven't told me that information, so there's not much I can do with that. If an object now contains, so this is part 3, if an object now contains half the carbon -14 that it contained at death, how old is the object now? Well, if an object now contains half the amount of carbon -14, so the object now contains half the amount. And we're talking about it contained at death. So we now know that M and A are equal to each other at time is 0. So at the time of death, we know that A and M are equal. How old is the object? Well, I hope that makes sense there, what I've done. Because they've said, you know, at the time of death, it means that I'm allowed to use A is equal to M. The only time I'm allowed to use A is equal to M is at the time of death, or at the start at time is 0. Okay, so now we need to start working this out. I'm going to divide both sides by A. I end up with a half is equal to e to the power of 0.000122t. I'm going to get into log format. Maybe you prefer to have that written as 0.5, that's fine. So we have log the base e of a half is equal to, no, I think that's a minus, isn't it? Minus 0.00012t. So what is log in the base e of a half? And so I'm going to divide both sides by minus 0.00012. T is equal to 5,776.22, so approximately 5,766 years old. 776, sorry, I don't know what I said there, years. Tricky enough question just by the wording.